Hello, and welcome to Gardener's World. Now the leaves are starting to stream from the trees, and autumn is well underway. But when it comes to the pond, it's worth gathering them up as they come down, every few days. And the reason why we're gathering them up is because we don't want them to biodegrade in the water, because all that will do is add to the nutrient levels, and the plants that will flourish most as a result are duckweed and algae. So collecting up the leaves is going to keep the water clearer next year. And it does a really good byproduct too. This is not rubbish. The leaves are gold because we can turn them into lovely crumbly leaf mould. And I'll be talking about that later on. Also this week, Carol makes a final visit to new gardeners Dom and Dan as they look back over their progress during the past year.
We're going to use this opportunity to take stock of where the garden's got to and to start the process of getting it ready for winter.
And in another instalment of Rachel's Cut Flower Diary, we join her as she begins to see some results.
It does seem incredible to think that this was just bare earth in all of these raised beds, and look at it now. It's so abundant, so effervescent.
Now, I've got a problem in this part of the garden. This is the back of the pond. And for years, it was really quite a wet area. It was very much part of the damp garden. But it's got too shady and too dry, and that combination is proving disastrous for these dogwoods, the cornus. Now, at this time of year, you can move shrubs or small trees. This is the moment to do it, because then the roots might grow a little bit, they get established, and then in spring, when the leaves start to grow, there is some foundation for them. Now this one, not growing at all well. So we'll start with this, dig it out. I mean, luckily it has rained, because I thought about doing this a week or two ago, and I could hardly get a spade in the ground. So it also means the plant has had a drink, which, if you're going to move anything substantial, give it a really good soak a week before you do so. And then it'll be in better health when it comes to the trauma of a transplant. I'm very fond of dogwood. I love the colour of the new bark in January, February, March time. So I want to look after them and preserve them. Look, that's hardly grown out of its planting hole. There we are. Look at that. You can still see the shape of the pot that it was in. Poor thing, and that's dry in there. We've had masses of rain over the last week. That's bone dry, and that completely explains why that's not thriving. So I'll give you a new home, old chap. There we go, you see, poor thing. As we go out, have a look at this hammer melis. Grow them for the flowers which come in February. They're lovely little tassels, in this case of orange. But look at the autumn foliage. Isn't that lovely? Go on, Nigel, out of the way. Now, the idea is to set up a rhythm of intense colour, working up the path. And the soil here, because it's flooded so often, is really good, sort of silty loam. I'm going to have to remove a couple of hellebores, I suspect. Right, that can come out. As with all woody plants, don't put any goodness in the shape of compost or manure underneath the plant, because all you're going to do is encourage it to stay within the planting hole. The place to put your feed is as a mulch on top. I'm going to give it a really good soak before I backfill. And that way, not just the roots can take up water, but the soil can start soaking it up. So I'm not burying dry soil beneath the roots. Good boy. Better to give too much water than too little. I'm giving it 3 gallons in there. There's plenty of water in the hole. It's mulched, and that's nice and firm. Now, if this was not a cornice, I might well prune it back to reduce the strain on the roots. But the right time to prune this will be in late March or even early April, because otherwise we'd be cutting away whatever colour there was. That should begin to feel at home next year. I don't think it will put on a really good display until the spring following it, but at least now it's got a fighting chance, and we've got a chance to enjoy it too. Now, over the past year, Carol has been paying regular visits to Dom and Dan, our beginner gardeners, and helping them create their back garden. And today she pays her final visit and gives them a hand putting the garden to bed for winter.
When I first met Dan and Dom earlier this year in March, their garden was a sea of mud, but they had big ambitions. Since then, with a little bit of help and inspiration, they've made paths, built walls, created flower beds, laid lawn, grown loads of veg and planted fruit trees to create a lovely family garden. Well, sadly, today is the last time I'm going to be with them. But we're going to use this opportunity to take stock of where the garden's got to and to start the process of getting it ready for winter. I think these flower borders have been brilliantly successful, especially when you think what they were like.
The mud plain.
Do you remember digging all that muck in?
Yeah, I remember those dark days, but we got through it, you know, and look what we've got as a result. It looks fantastic.
We have now got the beginnings of a few little holes appearing from annuals that we put in, sort of bulk stuff out, though.
Because you've used perennials here, there and everywhere,
Yep.
all those things can be divided and you can use them to fill some of these holes and spaces. It's a great time to divide anything that flowered early. Now, all this lovely stuff.
Still going strong, isn't it?
Yeah, if it's flowering late, divide it in the spring. But some things, like your pulmonarias, flowered early. It's a terrific plant, and I think it'll look brilliant over there,
With
wouldn't
a little
it?
gap in. Yep.
The whole idea is to go down dead straight with your spade. Wow.
Are we there? Yeah. One more underneath.
Now, I don't think you're going to need anything under there, you know, any extra muck, because you've done such a grand job already of preparing your soil. If you look at these two, they're actually in two quite separate chunks. You want the same level as when you had it planted before. And as you go, you can just shake this in so you know there are no air pockets. Really firm it. If it starts fizzling, then just cut it back hard.
And that's because the roots need the extra energy when they've been relocated.
It should try and keep these leaves alive at the expense of making new root growth, and it's the roots that are important. Okay. Give that a real good soak, it should be fine. What about this lovely meadowy bit over here?
It has been incredible. It's one thing everyone who comes has been blown away by it.
I didn't realise how big it was going to grow, and it's got a little bit unruly, and so we haven't really been able to utilise the bench.
What will you do next year, are you thinking about this?
Well, we sort of thought we might keep an element of the meadow, maybe over to one side.
You can save this seed now. Things like your cornflowers, this gorgeous blue. That Ami, I know you loved that,
Yeah, it's
didn't
beautiful.
you? So we can collect some seed from this. But then on this side, what are you thinking about?
Well, there are a few plants, weren't there, when we were walking around Rosemore, we thought it'd be lovely to start actually looking into a little bit.
Why not plant some bulbs? They'll be growing on. You know, you can be planting your herbaceous stuff in between them. And if you take all this out, I would actually improve the fertility, give it a good mulch of compost or rotted muck.
So if we're going to get rid of all of this, how are we actually going to go about doing that?
You just rip it out. I think that's brilliant. I feel like the foreman. That mulch is going to really improve the soil here. When you put these perennials in, it's really going to help them thrive. I think this has to be one of my favourite bits, this terrace. It's changed so hugely since I came here.
It has,
Yeah.
it has.
And it's been well
space.
used as well.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of parties down here.
The centre of it all, the focus has been these pots.
They've been very popular, particularly the canners, and then I particularly like the colour of the trusty rusties as well.
What, this coleus?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
They are beginning to look a little bit poorly, though, now.
Slightly dog-eared.
Yeah.
The whole idea of these tender plants, you know, subtropical, they give you this astonishing show right the way through the summer. But then it's just wonderful if you can look after them during the winter and use them again the next year. With the canner,
Yeah.
it's worth digging it up, putting it in a pot and just trying to keep it going. Look at that, made to measure. Well, they haven't got a big greenhouse.
No, but we've got a plastic temporary greenhouse.
If it's up against a house wall, it'll give you some degree of frost protection. And that should be all these need. With your dahlia, take it up, cut it back hard, invert it,
All right.
let all the moisture run out, and then you can pot it up with a bit of dry compost when all that moisture's gone. As far as your trusty rusty goes, your coleus, dig the whole thing up, pot it in a bit of decent compost, keep it on the windowsill, and take some cuttings in the spring.
Which is your favourite one? That one?
From a very unpromising muddy start, Dom and Dan have created a wonderful garden. It's been very hard work, but the main element here has been loads and loads of love. And with some new gardening skills under their belt, they should be well equipped to help it mature and flourish long into the future.
It's been lovely to see Dom and Dan's garden develop over the year, and I wish them every success for the future. And of course, the key thing is to fall in love with the process rather than feel that there is an end result to achieve. Because the truth is, every year it's different. Every year the same sort of things come round, and there are always surprises, however long you do it. And of course, one of the jobs that absolutely is guaranteed to come round at this time of year is leaf collecting, and whether it be in the pond or on the ground, the leaves will gradually fall. Now, there are two reasons to collect leaves. The first is to tidy up a bit, and that's fine, but not nearly so important as the second reason, which is to harness their unique power to convert into leaf mould. And of course, you can't buy leaf mould. You can only make it yourself, and thankfully, it's incredibly easy. When leaves fall, they go into a slow process of decomposition, which at all stages is gentle and involves none of the heat or the smell or sometimes the slime you get with composting, which is mainly done by bacterial action. What leaf mould does is break down largely through fungal activity. And after a year, you get this. And this is simply leaves that have rotted down, and they were on the tree this time last year. And we use them partly with potting compost, which works really well, and also as a mulch for woodland plants, particularly things like hellebores under shrubs and trees. Absolutely ideal. Now, the best way to encourage the fungal action that they need is to store the leaves in a bay. And if you haven't got room for a leaf mould bay, the other way you can keep them is just put them in a bag. Put them in a bin bag like that. Make sure they're good and wet. Punch a few holes in the bag with a pencil to drain off any excess water. Turn the top over, stick them out the way, and forget about them until next autumn. Now you can see that this is getting a little bit wobbly and wonky, and I need to repair it. In fact, a leaf mould bed doesn't have to be anything like as strong as a compost heap. You've got very little weight. The main purpose is to contain the leaves and stop them blowing away. So chicken wire is ideal. You let air in and just enough post to keep them upright, but that won't do. Not all leaves will behave in the same way. Ash, beech, hornbeam, hawthorn, apple will all rot down very quickly. They're very good for leaf mould. You'll find that oak leaves take a little bit longer. They're thicker and slower to break down, but they're still perfectly good. Don't add any evergreen leaves at all. They will take much longer. So keep it to deciduous trees where the leaves fall to the ground every year. And finally, if you've got any pine trees and you want ericaceous leaf mould, you can keep pine needles separate, break those down, and they will be great for mulching around rhododendrons or azaleas or camellias. That'll hold. That'll take this year's crop of leaves. And the job done. Now, talking of jobs, here are some other things you can be getting on with this weekend. If you grow alpines in pots and pans, they need protection from winter rain. A cold frame is ideal. Just close the lid enough to keep the rain off, but don't worry about cold, because that won't harm them. And if you don't have a cold frame, simply balance a sheet of glass, and a couple of upturned pots will do. Put the pot underneath, and that's all the protection it needs. Winter salad crops, such as rocket, should keep growing for a little while longer, but to extend their season and therefore your harvest, cloche them if you can. The important thing is to protect them from wind and rain as much as cold, so leave the ends of the cloches open to ensure good ventilation. If you pot up amaryllis bulbs now, they will be ready to flower in the new year. Use a free-draining compost and leave the top third of the bulb standing proud of the surface. Water them lightly and put them somewhere warm and light to grow. Now these sarracenias have been wonderful. Now I've never grown carnivorous plants before, so this is an absolute first for me. But they've been a delight and really easy. And they've done a job too, because although they're perfectly hardy and could have been outside, what they've been doing is catching flies. They're all full of insects in there, slowly digesting them. Now these are my first attempt at growing carnivorous plants, and Rachel this year has had her first attempt at creating a cut flower garden. And over the last few weeks, we've seen her diary of the process of setting it up and sowing seed. And now we join her as she starts to see the fruits of her labours.
My cut flower garden diary started back in March when my experiment began. But this week, I pick it up in the very height of summer.
Well, it's 3 full months since I started direct sowing outside in the cutting garden, and I was a little bit cautious about how it would go, but come and have a look.
The seeds did take a while to germinate, and then it seemed to be a sea of green for quite a while, but then gradually the flowers started to emerge.
It does seem incredible to think that this was just bare earth in all of these raised beds, and look at it now. It's so abundant, so effervescent. I'm really pleased with it. So over here, the dahlias, masses of colour already, and because it's been such a warm year, they really came through early. Now this bed, I'll just put that down, this bed, I was experimenting with these mixes, and I have to say this perhaps was the most problematic part of it. Although it looks very lovely now, at the beginning when I sowed the seeds, it was impossible to tell which ones were weeds and which were actually the flowers I wanted to keep. So I'm not sure I would do this again. The real success for me has been these beds. I like the way that they're in blocks. The clary sage, I think, has been a big success. Masses of flower, things like the cornflowers. I do wish I put in some more colours. So as I go through this process, I mean, it's an experiment for me too. I'm thinking all the time, what am I going to do next year? And there's lots more to come. I mean, the garden's by no means at its peak yet. So things like the antirrhinums in bud, not yet in flower here, and the sweet william just starting to come into bloom now.
As I saw my cut flower garden take shape, I also saw the gaps in my planting, the kind of flowers I was missing. I wanted to experiment more with perennials and to make sure I had plenty of flowers later in the year. So I decided to visit a British grower near my home on the edge of the Cotswolds for more inspiration.
I'm weaving my way through your lovely orchard, Anne, to find you.
I'm just picking a few late cornflowers and marigolds.
Do you know, they're so beautiful. There's nothing like that blue, is there? Actually, these are all the sort of annuals that I'm growing in my own cutting garden. And what I'd love for you to give me some tips on are ways that I can really extend the season of interest. And also just some tips, really some unusual things that I can grow for cutting that you might not think of.
Yeah, well, we grow things that go right through the winter, so you've always got something there. If you want to have a look.
Just lead the way.
OK. Yeah, this is my hot colours.
There is masses of colour, that's for sure. Beautiful. And the Monada here. Now, is that good for cutting?
Brilliant for cutting. It's just about going over now, but when you pick it just opening, it's really a marvellous plant.
Is that a general rule with perennials, to cut them really
opening.
just as they start to open? Do you know what, also, standing here, I love seeing that phlox and the persicaria, and then you've got the darker foliage as well with the cotinus. I mean, do you use the shrubs for the foliage?
Yes, I use that cotinus there, and we use the heads dry those. But you
The
can
flowers?
yes, you can use those as they are, but they dry beautifully.
As I walked around with Anne, I began to get a feel for the flowers that will give me a broader palette in the future.
Look at this.
Oh, the Romney, this is beautiful. Don't tell me you cut this as well.
We do, in big bunches. Beautiful for weddings, but it's highly scented as well.
Is it popular as a cut flower?
Yes, and as a garden plant.
Stunning. And you've got a lot of good shrubs and almost small trees here too.
Yes, there's quinces and there's willow, twisted willow.
Yes, that must be really useful actually. Now, I've got one of them, so I could definitely pinch bits from that.
Yeah, that is stunning in the winter. Do your winter arrangements with that.
That is quite beautiful. What about climbers? I mean, look at the hop there. That's so decorative, isn't it?
It's beautiful, and it's just starting to get its hops on it. It's in flower at the moment, so that will be good for picking.
There's so much variety here, isn't there?
Yeah, we've got a lot of plants.
A lot of plants.
We need more.
We always need more. Just look at this stunning arrangement that Anne's just put together. So beautiful. And I think, like many gardeners, I've always been really reluctant to raid the flower beds in order to get material for cutting. But having been here, seen what she does and the sheer variety of material that she uses, I'm going to be much braver about looking at trees, shrubs, perennials, whatever it takes to make arrangements that are really fresh, really seasonal, and just that bit extra special.
I think that if you're inspired to grow cut flowers, good time to prepare it is over winter. Make raised beds, order your seeds, get it all set, so come next March, you're ready to go. Now this banana, hopefully, is ready to go to bed. I've drained liquid out, there's quite a lot in there. So I'm going to store it just in a pot. I'm going to pack some leaf mould around it. It will, A, keep it upright, and B, just give it enough protection over the winter months. The key thing is, I don't want this to grow. I want it just to stay alive. So we'll put that in a dark, cool, frost-free place, which for the moment is the tool shed. Now, the weather has quietened down today, but over the last week, we've had really wet, stormy weather here at Longmeadow. And at this time of year, you do get a lot of damage. I've got a tree dahlia here. You can see it's blown right down. Here we go. And it's actually lifted out of the soil. Now, tree dahlias are tender, so it's got to be lifted just like you would any normal dahlia and stored over winter. So I'm going to cut this one off. But it is worth going through the borders regularly throughout October, even into November, and tweaking them. Just seeing what's fallen, trying to support it if you can, enjoying the flowers, like these Tiphonias, for example, are still flowering. The first frost will kill them dead, but you might as well get the most from them as long as you can. But this is going to have surgery. I'll cut it right off there. Look at that. Now that's all this year's growth. They are magnificent plants. Look how beautiful that is. And then the ribs of the leaf stem. Really exotic. That can come out. The biggest problem at this time of year is wet, limp foliage falling on top of other plants that are unaffected. And you can see this yew hedge that I planted to replace the box hedge that used to be here has grown really well, but it won't be helped by having a dahlia or anything else falling on top of it. So it's just a question of a bit of tweaking, just to make sure that the last few weeks of the autumn garden is looking as good as possible. Well, that's it for the moment. I'll see you back here at Longmeadow next time. Till then, bye-bye. Hello, welcome to the last Gardener's World of the year. Now, the year does feel as though it's drawing in. Of course, the garden still has lots to enjoy, but our days have got short. The weather's getting chillier, and it's time to start thinking about how best to prepare it for winter, as well as preparing it for next year. This week, Rachel brings us a very welcome splash of colour as she concludes her cut flower diary with a wonderful harvest.
Now you know things are heading the right direction when even the bucket starts to look good.
Carol continues her celebration of the wildlife that does so much for our gardens by looking at the creatures that rely on our hedges.
Nearly all our woodland birds, half of our mammals, and a third of all our butterflies use hedgerows to survive.
And we're finding out about some of the nasties that may lurk in our gardens at this time of year. This is a plant that always frustrates and delights me in equal measure at this time of year. It's Salvia elegans. It's got lovely pineapple-scented leaves and this beautiful flower, but the flower only emerges, here anyway, the end of October, beginning of November. And of course, that's when the weather gets too cold for it. But if you can bring it indoors, in the greenhouse or a conservatory or porch, it will blaze with flower right through November. In many ways, this has been a better year for the garden than it has been for gardeners. Because although it was so wet last winter, we had a lovely spring and the garden really flourished as we came into summer. Then August felt pretty wet and cold, but it's surprising, actually, nothing suffered. The dahlias, the cannas, the tithonias, they all flowered and burgeoned as freely as I've ever seen them. And then, as we've gone on into autumn, it's stayed mild, there's still plenty of colour. One or two favourites of mine, for instance, the Leonotis, has finally flowered, and the grass borders take on their subtle, shifting, rather tapestry-like colours. And at the same time, we've had the appearance of one or two plants that are really rather surprising. For example, you wouldn't normally expect to see these flowers at this time of year. This shrub is called Viburnum plicatum marizia and has lovely rafts of white flowers in late May. But here they are, reappearing again at the same time as it's got its autumn foliage. And last week I had an Aquilegia Gerard. We've got violets out a little bit earlier. I've got emails and letters noticing similar unlikely and unseasonal flowering. So Lisa from Norfolk has cowslips and primroses. And in Fife, Sheila says she's got lupins. Heather from Swansea's got rhododendrons flowering again. Now, the first thing is, this is not a problem. This is not a plant in its death throes, or it doesn't mean to say that it won't flower next year. And in many ways, it's a good thing. It's lovely to see flowers. I think it does reflect that our climate is changing. For example, we've had the warmest and wettest January to August ever recorded, and plants are learning to adapt. And the really interesting thing for us gardeners is we notice these things. We're on the front line. Now, throughout this year, Rachel has made, for the first time, a cut flower garden and kept a diary of it. And we visited her as she set out, sown seeds, and now we pay our final visit. And it's the height of summer, and she's collecting her wonderful floral harvest.
I started my experimental cutting garden back in March. The flowers took a while to get going, but in late July there was an explosion of colour, and that's when I recorded the final instalment of my cut flower garden diary.
One of the best things about the British climate, in my opinion, is that it's always throwing up something unexpected. So some of the flowers in the cutting garden that I thought would be flowering now have gone over, and others have still to come. But it doesn't matter, because you're not aiming for everything to peak at exactly the same time. You want a nice continuity of material right the way through the season, and there is plenty. So you relax, you enjoy the process, go with the flow, and cut what's looking good now.
I had the perfect excuse to raid my beds as I was throwing a tea party for my youngest daughter's birthday. It was a great opportunity to show off what I'd grown to family and friends.
Now, I tend to start with the more architectural plants, the things that are going to sort of form the basis of any arrangement, also the foliage. So I've got this glorious clump of dill here, so I'm going to take a few pieces of that. I'm not going too far down because these aren't very tall arrangements. And I've also got a bit of Rodolphi, although that's pretty much gone over. I think I'll just take one of these. Now, I'm putting those stems straight into a bucket of water, so they never get a chance to really seal over at the ends and stop taking the water up. So, well, I think I'll take some of this Cerinthe. This beautiful glaucous foliage is really good as a contrast to many other colours. And the other tip is to water the plants the night before you're going to cut. Make sure that they're really full of water in the morning. If you do it later in the day, particularly if it's been hot, then they can already be a bit droopy. Now, while I've been collecting the foliage, I've been thinking about colour. This is the fun bit. So I think I'm going to go for some of these really strong, punchy tones, because after all, it's a kids' party, it should be really cheerful. So I think that's the way to go. I'm going to start with some of these cornflowers. I'll just go for the ones with the most intense colour. I'm going to use some of this nigella because look, these look like little spaceships, the seed heads. They're really good, and I think the children will love those especially. I am loving the zinnias. I mean, they've just got that intensity of colour, and I think they're going to work really well with these antirrhinums. I do feel a bit spoilt for choice. It's like being a kid in a sweet shop. I could just go round taking a bit of everything, so I'm trying not to be greedy. I think I've got to have a sunflower, though. And these are gorgeous, called Velvet Queen, this wonderful burnt umber colour. Right, now you know things are heading the right direction when even the bucket starts to look good. So if you start off with a really clean vase, really clean, freshly drawn water, and another good trick is to put something in it to slightly acidify the water because tap water is slightly alkaline. So if you put in either a little bit of thin household bleach, or you could use lemon juice, you could use a sterilising tablet and drop that in. Either way, that will help to keep the water clean and fresh. OK, stand back, have a think. When I'm deciding what to put into an arrangement, it's pretty much like planting for me. It's looking at the shape and the textures and the balance of the whole thing. Colour is obviously a part of it, but it's certainly not the most important thing. And then it's personal taste. So, the other important thing is knowing when to stop. And I think I might just be at that point. Look at that, it's just luminous. Yeah, very informal again, but I like it, and I like that bit of rosemary in there as well. And it smells wonderful.
While preparations for the party got underway, I tried to create some different looks using a variety of vases. But I was careful not to make the displays too tall. My guests needed to be able to see each other over the flowers. A handful of posy vases added a finishing touch to the table. As I sign off my cutting garden diary, I can't deny it's been quite labour-intensive growing all these blooms, but I'm so pleased I did. There's nothing quite like the smell of freshly cut flowers.
Well, this has been an experiment for me this year, having my own cut flower garden, but it's been tremendous fun. I've learned an enormous amount. And for me, this is what it's all about. It's sharing your garden, sharing cut flowers with friends and family, and I'm definitely doing it again next year.
A garden filled with flowers is always going to be a delight, but there are certain aspects of gardens which get a bad press, really. Not many people are going to sing the praises of a slug or a snail, and I guess fungus comes into that category. The very word sends shivers down the spines of a lot of gardeners. The truth is that the vast majority of fungi in our gardens are really useful. But at this time of year, in a warm, wet autumn, you start to notice fungi in particular, and you get mushrooms and toadstools and bracket fungi appearing all over the place. And there are a few fungi which do need to be addressed. And the important thing is to be able to tell the difference between what is potentially harmful and what is actually beneficial. And for that, you need advice. So we went along to RHS Wisley to ask an expert.
People write in with all sorts of problems at this time of the year, but one of the most common ones is bracket fungus. Bracket fungi can be very serious. They cause a rot at the centre of the tree, which can make it quite unstable. There won't be any other symptoms apart from the fungus sort of protruding from the trunk of the tree. If people find a mushroom like this on their tree, there's no need to remove it. The fungus is already present in the tree itself, so removing it isn't going to make any difference to the health of the tree. Key thing is to get it checked by an expert and ensure the tree is safe. Honey fungus is another disease that attacks trees, and we get a lot of inquiries about it. So this tree here has honey fungus, and the symptoms we're looking for initially are dieback of the branches, early leaf fall, browning of the leaves, and then to confirm honey fungus, you need to check at the base where it attacks. So if you peel back the bark, you'll see the creamy white fungus beneath the bark. It will have texture a bit like mushroom skin, and it will smell really strongly of mushrooms too. Unfortunately, this tree will have to be removed, and that includes the stump and as many roots as possible, and that's just to limit its spread onto other healthy trees in the garden. Other symptoms you might see of honey fungus are the mushrooms that it produces, but it doesn't always produce these. But if you do have a dying tree that has a clump of mushrooms with the light sort of honey-coloured cap with a darker centre and a ring around the stem of the mushroom, then that's likely to be honey fungus. If people suspect they have honey fungus in their garden, don't do anything drastic and contact a qualified tree surgeon for advice. Brown rot is very common, and it affects not just apples but plums and pears as well. The fungus can enter the fruit through wounds, and it causes the browning of the fruit, and you will see these pustules of the fungus on the fruit as well, often formed in concentric rings. If you do find brown rot on your tree, it's good to act quickly, so remove any affected fruit, because otherwise it will affect other fruit on your tree. Rose black spot is very common in UK gardens, and in fact it's the most serious rose disease that we have. It causes these black purple spots on the leaves and yellowing of the leaves, and also early defoliation of the plants. You can see these have lost a lot of their leaves. Rose black spot loves damp conditions, and we've had quite a damp, wet August this year, so we've had quite a lot of black spot around this year. If you don't want to use chemicals in your garden, you can collect up all the leaves and you can either bury them in the soil at least 30 centimetres deep, and this is because the fungus produces spores, and this stops the spores being released and spread to other roses. You can also put them in your council green waste scheme as well. What you don't want to do is put them in your home compost, because the temperatures don't get hot enough to kill the fungus and the spores. Not all fungi are harmful to gardens. In fact, most are quite beneficial in the garden. These mushrooms here are living on the mulch that's been put down and breaking down the wood and bark and turning that into nutrients for the soil. I love fungi, and I think they're very beautiful, and I think they should just be enjoyed while they're present in your garden and make the most of them.
Come on, down here. course, the thing that one has to remember is that you would have no garden at all without fungi, so don't think of it as the enemy. And in fact, even doing something as straightforward as planting a rose needs fungi to make it work, and I'll show you what happens. Here in the writing garden, most of the plants are white, and I'm planting a white rose in here, which is Rosa rugosa alba. I've got it soaking in water. Bare root roses come without a pot. They're dug straight up from the nursery and sent to you, usually in packaging, so as soon as you get it, first thing to do is give it a drink. It's the same technique whether you're planting bare root or roses in a pot, and I'm getting too hot, so let's take that off. Which is to make a wide hole, but one that isn't actually too deep. Because what you want the roots to do is spread out sideways rather than go straight down. So let's uncut these and take a plant out. And we're going to plant that so that the graft, the union, is below the ground. About there is a good planting height, and that will determine the depth of the hole. So a little bit deeper than that. Now, this is the point at which fungus comes in. Because if we use mycorrhizal fungi, that acts as a conduit between the soil and the plant. It enables the roots to take up nutrients much easier. And the crucial thing is to make sure that there is actual direct contact between the roots, the mycorrhizal fungi, and the soil. Rosa rugosa alba also makes a lovely hedge. Lots of roses will make hedges, but this is one of the best. So you have really lovely white flowers, and then the hips. And of course, as a hedge, we have lots of hips. That's wonderful for birds. And all this year, Carol has been looking at the relationship between our garden plants and wildlife. And this week, she's celebrating the hedge.
I've been exploring the range of habitats our gardens provide and looking at the wildlife that make themselves at home there. Perhaps one of the most important is on the very periphery of our gardens, our hedges. Nearly all our woodland birds, half of our mammals, and a third of all our butterflies use hedgerows to survive. Hedges offer everything from early nectar to autumn berries. They provide protection and cover, as well as being a rich hunting ground. The animals and insects that frequent our hedges were once woodland dwellers, but as our forests and woods gave way to farmland and housing, they've had to adapt. In some places, our garden hedges are all that remain. Well, my native hedge runs right down the length of the garden. But even if you've got a small plot, you can still recreate exactly the same sort of structure and the same kind of habitat. When you look at the base of the hedge, it's like a mini woodland. You've got all sorts of trunks, all these lovely leaves and stems. It's really vital not to tidy up the base of your hedge, though. There's all sorts of wonderful things down here. Earwigs, centipedes, there are woodlice, there are beetles of every description, there are slugs and snails, but they themselves form a vital part of the food chain. And they provide rations for mice, shrews, voles, and of course, birds. I mean, down here, I've got a snail shell that some thrush has been along and bashed onto this wood here and feasted on its contents. But as far as mammals go, there's one in particular that actually takes its name from this habitat, from the hedgerow. Hedgehogs are one of our best-loved wild mammals. Unfortunately, populations have plummeted by 95% since 1950, coinciding with over 300,000 miles of rural hedgerow being removed over the last 50 years. But all is not lost. given the chance, they can still find a home in our gardens. And they're a major predator of some of the gardeners' main enemies, slugs and snails. They're nocturnal. They can cover up to 3 kilometres each night around our gardens feeding. As the weather gets cold, they seek out a safe place to hibernate and spend up to 4 months curled up in a state of dormancy before emerging in March. It's not just the base of the hedge that's important. The middle of it is a vital environment for all sorts of creatures. Here in my hedge, I've got so many different native species. I've got field maple, I've got hazel, viburnums. Even in a small town garden where all you've got is a privet hedge, you can improve it by putting in all manner of climbing plants. Wonderful things like honeysuckle, wild roses, ivy, anything which makes this hedge dense and thick and a real haven for birds. At least 30 bird species nest in our hedgerows. Wrens, robins, whitethroats and dunnocks usually nest low down as they love the cover that's provided. But other birds like thrushes and blackbirds enjoy a higher position. Many feed on different varieties of caterpillars, cutworms, snails and aphids, helping to keep our plants healthy. There are several species of birds that use our hedgerows all the year through. Things like robins, tits, blackbirds, thrushes, wrens are permanent residents. But our hedges also provide vital supplies for visitors from abroad. As the freezing, icy winter descends upon Scandinavia, field fares gather to begin their journey south to warmer lands, flying an epic 500 miles across the North Sea. They begin to arrive on the east coast of Britain in October and spread southwest across the country in search of the larder of berries our hedgerows provide. This feast will last them through the winter. In spring, as the weather warms up, most birds will return to their homeland. Berries are a hugely important source of high-energy food. Things like hawthorn, holly, rosehips, viburnums. I have rowan in my hedge, and already the blackbirds and thrushes have polished off the lot, but I know that these berries are going to go on providing food right the way through the winter, both for the birds who are here all the time and for all those winter visitors. Hedges are an important part of our gardens. They provide a wonderful backdrop for ornamental plantings. They make really efficient boundaries. What's more, hedges provide wonderful corridors for creatures to pass along safely and move from one garden to another. It doesn't really matter what size your hedge is. If you've got a thriving hedge, your garden is going to be a healthy, living place.
If you don't have a hedge in your garden, or it's inspired you to plant another one, now is a really good time to go out and choose your hedging material and get it in the ground. But of course, it's not just hedges that can help wildlife over winter. The main thing is not to be too tidy. I've got here a pile of wood. This was prunings I've cut up, left on the ground, provides fantastic cover. Maybe hedgehogs in there, you get little voles, insects, and if you haven't got prunings, just leaves. Shelter and cover over winter will do as much as anything else to improve the wildlife in your garden. However, not tidying too much doesn't let you off the hook. Here are some jobs you can get on with this winter. If you've got terracotta pots, don't leave any soil in them over winter because there's a risk that they'll get wet and then expand and possibly crack. Empty the soil out, wash them well, and store them upside down so they're protected and ready for next spring. A really good job for a dark, rainy day is to get all the tools that have an edge, ranging from a small pair of secateurs to a spade or a hoe, clean them, get rid of any rust, sharpen them, oil them, and then put them away, ready for action. Go through your seeds to make sure you don't build up a backlog. Seeds lose viability as they age. I have a rule that anything more than 2 years old gets chucked. Be ruthless, and then, and only then, start to make your seed order for next year. Come on, Nigel. Another job which is quite a good idea to do early on in winter, although it can be left till spring, is to mulch. There are pros and cons about mulching in spring and winter. A spring mulch is very good for suppressing weeds and keeping in moisture. But if you mulch in autumn or winter itself, that will give more time for the mulch to improve the soil texture, and also gives the soil a bit of protection against heavy rain, against snow and against ice. Now, there are lots of things you can use. I'm using cocoa shells here, and these have the great advantages that they're light, and you pour them on the ground rather than having to shovel them or wheel them in wheelbarrows. Best of all is garden compost, but there's very rarely enough to do the whole garden with that. Mushroom compost is really good, but quite expensive. Bark is good. There's lots of choice. Any organic material will make good mulch. One final thing I would say about cocoa mulch is that it is said to be harmful to dogs, particularly in the first 2 weeks of putting it down. I've used it for about 15 years and there's never been any harm, but I think it's worth pointing out that that could potentially be a problem. But as long as you promise not to eat too much of it, Nigel, I think you'll be okay. Well, that's it for today and this year. But Nigel and I will be back here at Longmeadow next spring. So until then, bye-bye. Hello, welcome back to a new series of Gardener's World and the most glorious day here at Longmeadow. We've had a pretty good winter, really, done lots, and I'll show you that later. But right now, I'm just cutting back these limes because all winter they've had this lovely glowing colour from the stems, but the buds are now fattening up and getting ready to break into leaf. So it's time to cut them back, and you could do this with dogwood or willow just as well. And that will provoke a new flush of shoots that carry the leaves of summer, and then next winter, they in turn will have that lovely colour. But cutting them back is a sure sign that spring is on its way. I'll be joined this year by familiar faces who will be travelling around the country visiting our glorious gardens and sharing ideas and tips that they gather along the way. Few places are looking better than the winter garden at Wisley right now. Carol is there looking for the best planting combinations to light up even the darkest days.
In winter, what happens is that the light changes. The sun is low in the sky, and it creates this drama, especially first thing in the morning and late in the afternoon.
Over the next few weeks, Jo will be revealing tricks of the trade to make the most of small town gardens.
Those all-important garden design elements, such as layout, materials, planting, privacy, and finishing touches to help you get the most from your plot.
And we're also off to South Africa, which is home to many of our favourite garden plants, to see where they thrive in the wild. We've had a fairly good winter here at Longmeadow. We've had frost and we've had rain, and often on the same day, but it hasn't stopped us getting on. And we've got on quite well. It all began here in the writing garden, which was okay last year, but didn't seem to be as good as it had been in its first year. And I put this down to lack of light. Things were growing and struggling to get enough light. So we cut the hedges right down, reduced them by half. Looked good. So we thought we'd do the next hedge, and then the next one. And in fact, we've reduced the height of the hedges right through the garden. And that's created as big a transformation as any in the last 10 years. As part of the changes, the orchard has had a makeover too. Fences have come down, and the apple trees have had a cosmetic prune to lift them up so we can see underneath. But now is exactly the right moment to prune any apple tree for best productivity. Now, when you're pruning an apple tree, the first thing is to understand how most apples produce their fruits, which is on spurs. This branch is about 4 or 5 years old, and coming off the side are these spurs. All the apples are produced on spurs like that. And if you look at last year's growth, you can see it's completely smooth, no spurs on it yet at all, so there'll definitely be no fruit on this year, and maybe not even next year. It takes about 2 to 3 to 4 years to produce fruit-bearing spurs. When you prune, it stimulates a massive growth. But that growth will be smooth, it won't have spurs, so there'll be no apples. So if you pruned every year, you'd have an awful lot of new growth and absolutely no apples at all. Now, this tree here has got 3 strong branches which are permanent, lots of space in between them, and I've pruned out any growth that comes in the middle. I was told when I was taught how to prune apples, imagine you've got a pigeon flying at the apple tree. You want to make it so that it can work its way through the middle of the tree without touching a branch. And that lets the light and the air in, and that helps with fungal problems, it helps with ripening, and is generally part of the apple's health. Now, if you take a tree like this is called Devonshire buckland. Now, you can see that the central stem, it's a semi-standard, is good, but a lot of these branches are in a mess. And the first thing to do is to remove any branches that are crossing, and you get them so they rub against each other, and you can get wounds forming, and that's where you get infection getting in. And the second thing is remove anything that's broken. If there's winter damage from storms, clean them off. Now, that is the starting point. So I'm going to check this through, and straight away, I can see I've got a branch here that shows it well. It's curving back on itself and rubbing against this branch behind. When you're making any cut, you want to make it slightly sloping so the water can run off, and also don't go right up flush against the joint that it's coming from. Leave a bit of a collar, because that will stop any disease getting back in. It's very important not to get too carried away with the cutting and stand back and have a look. But from up here, I can see I've untangled it. I've let in light and air, and the fruit will improve as well as the overall health of the tree. But all this work, and in fact all the work that we've done at Longmeadow over the last few months, is geared towards making the garden look better this spring and summer. But Carol has been to RHS Wisley to celebrate the way that it's looking right now.
In the depths of winter, our gardens can often be overlooked. Our sights are set expectantly on spring. Yet this time of year offers its own delights, an atmosphere unique to this season. Truly something to be celebrated. RHS Wisley is a world-famous garden that has a well-established winter garden. Here they're exploiting every element available, creating a spectacular display. There are all manner of cornus and willows planted here, providing absolutely glowing colour. You almost feel as though you could warm your hands on it. And it's all created by the bark of these various shrubs. At the end of each winter, the stems are cut right back hard onto these short little trunks. And that means that the new growth for them is full of energy and brilliant, brilliant colour. You can take inspiration from this sort of planting and bring those flaming colours into your own back garden. In winter, what happens is that the light changes. The sun is low in the sky, and it creates this drama, especially first thing in the morning and late in the afternoon. Here, not only have they placed things carefully so they take full advantage of that light, but also they've planted close to the water, so you get double for your money. Now, in this corner, the atmosphere is completely different. It's intimate. And as you walk along, you're suddenly aware of the most beautiful perfume, hamamelis, with these beautiful spidery flowers. The tiny little flowers of Sarcococca Christmas box, viburnums with these bunches of tiny little bright pink flowers. Pollinating insects are few and far between at this time of the year, but they're going to make sure that those insects know exactly where they are by belting out this beautiful perfume. And as you bend down to sniff the perfume more closely, you're suddenly aware of this carpet of flowers, all these winter aconites and the promise of what's to come. The winter borders here at Wisley have recently been extended to offer even more inspiration. Deputy Curator Matt Pottage has been instrumental in their growth.
What we wanted to show in this bed is just sometimes structure, stem shapes. You've got these contorted hazels in here.
Yeah.
Now, they can be just as beautiful as something flowering.
I love the intricacy of this little, is this a sophora?
It is, it's for a little baby. You know, that's purely here because of that little zigzag stems, the small leaves. But, you know, why not have that in the winter garden? It's just as pretty. The lovely thing with these is you can still see all the irises through them. It is
see
quite...
everything through, yeah. They're very transparent. What other new ideas have you tried?
So some really funky planting, which I really love, are some thuias. They've got these bizarre-looking, like, up-tend mops or something. And then they've got this white rubus biflorus running through them. And also the thing I really want to show people is that if you've got a winter display, it can also be nice in the summer. You know, these corners are variegated. You've got the strange foliage of the contorted hazels. The sephoras are really beautiful still in the summer.
Yeah,
so
and you could have summer bulbs all through here too, couldn't you, if you wanted to? It's not just for winter, but winter is such an important season, isn't it?
It is.
It's so neglected in the gardener's calendar. This garden so clearly proves winter can be the most exciting time. So don't wait till spring to get outside and see your garden. There's not a minute to lose. Go for it.
Carol is going to be visiting lots of glorious gardens throughout the series, and in particular this year, she's going to be unpicking the borders, seeing how plants have been combined and put together so that we can do that in our own gardens. Now, if you've got any photographs of your own garden in winter, then send them to us. We'd love to see them and we can share them on the programme. Are you coming in? Come on then. Come on. Shut the door. This greenhouse has been filled with pelargoniums all winter. And actually, they've been very happy. It's heated just above about 5 degrees. They're hardly watered at all, bone dry, and they've come through really nicely. But it is important just to give them a little bit of attention now, just before they start to grow. We've got lots of different types, but they all need the same treatment. And the first thing to do is to cut them back hard. If we take one like this, which scented leaf, I'm pretty sure it's Lady Plymouth, although long lost its label. Lovely musty lemon leaf smell. Now you can see that's starting to get a little bit leggy. And the new growth, of course, will make it even more leggy. And what they respond well to is just given a good hard chop. So if I get in there and cut right back like that, you'll do no harm. It will respond well. I'll just cut that off. And what it'll do is keep the shape of the plant, but also reinvigorate it. Now, at this stage, that's enough. So we've reduced that right down, ready to have a flush of new growth and have more flowers. Now, this material here is potentially all good for cuttings. So when you do this pruning of your pelargoniums, have a polythene bag in your pocket. And then when you finish the job, they can be turned into cuttings for new plants that should be flowering by the end of the year. Now, the next thing to do is just check it over and pick off any dead leaves, and particularly the petals of any flowers. If you get petals or leaves falling and they get damp, they can carry botrytis, which is a mold, and these are plants that don't respond well to mold. So just snip off any dead material. Don't give them too much water, and certainly don't feed them yet. Start to feed them in about 2 months' time when they're really growing. And I suppose the key to growing any plant successfully is to know where it comes from, and then you can see what it does naturally. And we went to South Africa, which is the home of the pelargonium, to see them growing freely exactly where they thrive best. South Africa contains a wide range of habitats. It has rugged coastlines, dramatic mountains, lush valleys, as well as subtropical forests. And some of our most loved plants that we grow in our British gardens have their roots deep in South African soil. So this is where to come and discover what makes them thrive. Now, one of these is the pelargonium, and it's a huge genus of plants with over 270 species. In the southwest of South Africa, summers are hot and dry and the winters are mild, and generally the rainfall is low. And over millennia, the pelargonium has adapted perfectly to the region's intense sunlight and parched soils, as well as the salt-laden winds that whip the coastline. Table Mountain is in the heart of pelargonium country, and on its slopes can be found Pelargonium cucullatum. This variety first reached Britain in the 17th century and is the parent of all the regal pelargoniums. Roger Oliver is a horticulturist who specialises in South Africa's many pelargonium species.
Pelargonium cucullatum is a truly amazing pelargonium species that can cope with a variety of different soil and terrain conditions. Here we have a bush that is growing just below Table Mountain, exposed to very harsh conditions during summer months. But the plant is quite adaptable. It has hairs on both sides of the leaves. And when the fog or the mist moves in, it captures all the moisture, and this helps to keep the plant cool, and it's another way for the plant to survive. However, in the summer, when it gets too hot, the plant stops flowering and seeds are being produced. And a nice aspect about pelargonium is the fact that the seed is equipped with a special coil, and that coil allows the seed to be wind dispersed And then also that allows the seed to anchor into the soil. And this gives the plant a better opportunity to survive and also good for germination.
Regal pelargoniums are hugely popular for both indoor and outdoor growing in the UK. But there is another species that has actually helped shape the way that we garden, and it's called Pelargonium peltatum. This is the parent of all our familiar ivy leaf varieties. Pelargonium peltatum is very at home in scrubland and will happily scramble and climb through trees and shrubs. They're semi-succulent and can be identified by their glossy ivy-shaped leaves. This succulent structure perfectly protects them from strong winds and also ensures their survival in periods of drought. And their trailing, sprawling habit and preference for free-draining, open compost makes them perfect hanging basket plants. A variety that prefers shadier areas is Pelargonium zonale, which is parent to the UK's most popular group of pelargoniums, the zonals.
Here we are with one of the most fascinating pelargoniums. This is the Pelargonium zonale, and something that will thrive in both sun as well as full shade. This particular species you'll mostly find on the margins of forest, or you'll find it growing in a ravine, and there it will be subjected to shade for most of the day, maybe exposed only to full sun for, say, 2 to 3 hours. It is more cool, and often the plant also experiences a prolonged flowering season. Normally, the zonal pelargonium has a very distinct black marking on the top side of the leaf, very, very broad leaf, almost in a heart shape, and it also have toothed margins. It is a very floriferous pelargonium, so it has flowers that are in a shape of an umbel, and also it has a distinctive aroma. It obviously enjoys water because you'll find that the species occurs in a rainfall region that are subjected to rainfall right throughout the year.
These 3 pelargonium species are amongst the most successful cultivated plants in the world. They not only thrive in their own niches, but as plant exports, they've colonized the planet, flourishing in gardens everywhere. There is nothing like seeing a plant in its home to get a real feel of what makes it happy. Now, what makes me happy is to have new plants, so I want to take some cuttings from these, and I've got some other jobs that you can be getting on with as well this weekend. Pelargoniums take very easily as cuttings as long as you observe a couple of rules. Now, the first is to have a very free-draining compost. Prepare the cuttings so they're about 3 to 4 inches long and remove all the foliage except 1 or 2 leaves. Insert the cuttings around the edge of the pot. The second thing to remember is to water the compost but not the plant, because if you get the plant too wet, there's a real risk of them rotting off before they strike. Put them somewhere warm, and they should take in about 3 to 4 weeks. Chitting seed potatoes is very simple, but it's important to do it if you want the earliest possible crop of new potatoes. And new potatoes come from first or second early varieties. All you have to do is place the seed potatoes on a seed tray or in egg boxes, and then put them somewhere frost-free and light. And over the next few weeks, they'll develop stubby shoots that will spring into action once they're planted into the ground. If you haven't done so already, it's time now to prune your autumn fruiting raspberries. These are the ones that produce their fruit on the current season's growth. So you can cut away all of last year's canes, cutting them hard right down to the ground. Then when you've finished, give them a thick mulch to keep them free of weeds. A good mulch never does any harm at all, but for raspberries, it's extra important. They like cool, moist roots, and the mulch will keep the moisture in and keep the sun out. But also, they must be kept weed-free because they've got very shallow roots and you can't hoe around them without damaging the raspberries. So put a really thick layer. And it can be old hay, as I've got here. It could be bark. I've even seen grass mowings used in a great heap around the roots. And that'll do them no harm at all and will keep the weeds at bay. Now, at the end of last summer, Joe Swift went visiting town gardens to gather together all the best hints and tips of how to make the most of those urban spaces.
Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be looking at different sizes and shapes of town gardens. And I'd like to give you some ideas for turning your own garden into a success. This week, I'm looking at a contemporary rectangular garden. This garden really draws you in with its balanced design and fabulous textural planting. Now, it's a long, thin plot, 36 metres long by 8.5 metres wide. But this contemporary design by Joanne Bernstein makes best use of all the available space. With a long, thin rectangular garden, a very simple technique which makes all the difference is just to create some movement across the garden. That's been done here using 2 offset paths that link between the various seating areas. This garden's southeast facing, which means this terrace where I am now gets the morning sun, and as the sun moves across the sky, the middle terrace will catch the afternoon and the evening sun. Perfect. With a 3rd seating area at the shady end, we've got our 3 main destinations. And then this garden has added height and colour using large planting beds. You need to block off these areas visually by bringing the planting right across into the middle of the garden space, and then that's going to create that flow and draw you through. So here, for example, we've got these miscanthus grasses, which are nearer the house. They create a wonderful foreground, but at the same time, you see plants when you look out of the window rather than just the lawn. Then the last 2 areas are green lawns to create a contemporary layout, neatly formed, all of rectangles. In a small garden, the boundaries are really important. They'll set the style of the place. And in a town, they're the things that will help give your garden privacy. It's difficult to relax if you feel like you're being overlooked. And in a town or city garden, you've always got neighbours close by. But rather than building up the trellis and creating a fortress and lots of shade, think about the height of the screening and exactly where you want it. Because here, when I'm seated, this short piece of trellis blocks out windows from next door, so I feel perfectly secluded. And then here, it just steps down a little bit, it gets shorter and shorter, and then disappears altogether at the end of the garden. All the paving here is a natural smooth sandstone. The light-coloured stone lifts even the darker spaces and has lovely, clean, crisp edges. What it does is bring the garden together, just having that same material running through. And as a rule, I would only use a maximum of 2 surface materials, otherwise it just looks too fussy. And as you can see, 1 may be simple, but it's very effective. What works well with the planting here are the large beds, which have been laid out to be admired from all sides. What's clever is the seating area has been rotated 90 degrees, so I'm not looking back towards the house or towards the end of the garden, but looking straight out into this nice, generous bed of plants. This garden works hard to maximise all its planting opportunities, even in the trickiest spots. Town gardens often have deep, shady areas, but it doesn't mean you can't get some great plants into them. Here we've got brunnera and ferns combining, greening up that border. But even on the horizontal, the surface, you can green it up a little bit like a lawn. This is mind your own business. I love the zen-like qualities it brings to the garden. Now, it does come with a health warning because it can be a little bit invasive and spread into the borders, but it looks spot on here. The finishing touches, like pots and furnishing, can really set off your garden design. But the final flourish certainly worth considering is lighting. If you plan it from the start, you can stretch your enjoyment of the garden well into the evening. A few lights at the back of the garden, which is a shady space anyway, lighting up into the canopies of the trees and highlighting the trunks and their interesting bark, makes this a really inviting space. Somewhere you probably wouldn't bother coming at night, but with the lighting like this, you'd definitely come down here. This garden is a great example of how to make the maximum use of space. It's transformed this plot from just a rectangle to a plant-filled haven to enjoy by day or night.
Last winter, I stored as many good apples as I could, and we've still got lots. This is Blenheim orange, and we've been eating them all winter. And I intend to bake these. Core them, put them in the oven, bake them for about 30-40 minutes, and then you can just dip into that dish for the rest of the week. You can eat them hot, you can have them cold, I love them for breakfast. But that's it for this time, and I'll see you back here at Longmeadow next week. Till then, bye-bye. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, March is full of flowers that are emerging. You've got bulbs, but nothing matches the regal, almost voluptuous richness of hellebores. They look good as they are in clumps with their flower heads bent down, but when you then look within, you realise that they are really special. One problem that hellebores are prone to, it's a fungal problem. This is leaf spot. It's not a total disaster, but you do need to watch out for it. And you can see there's a leaf here with the characteristic chocolate splodges. And the best thing to do about that is to remove the old foliage, cut it off at the base. Don't put that on the compost heap. The best thing to do with those is either burn them or bin them and have them taken away. But keep them separate from the rest of the plants because that will spread the fungus. This week, Carol begins a project helping out a couple to reclaim their very overgrown garden.
It wasn't until we moved in that we thought, wonder what we're going to do with this.
And Jo is looking how professional garden designers use the tricks of the trade to make even a small garden feel bigger than it really is.
This small garden has instant impact from the second you leave the back door. The perfect antidote to its urban surrounds.
It's tricky to produce a really good hellebore seedling, but we visit a woman who's dedicated the past 10 years of her life to doing exactly that.
I am the bee flying around flower to flower, creating new youngsters that are coming on.
Well, not only am I going to be planting some fresh hellebores, but I've got a fresh place to plant them. This has been, for the past few years, the area where we had our shreddings, leaves to make leaf mould, all be moved, dug up, mulched, ready for planting on a grand scale. And these are going to be the first to go in the ground. And I've chosen them for their slight apple greenness and touch of sort of primrose yellow. So you can see that's got a rather pale, delicate colour with intense plum-coloured markings. Put some planks down so I don't tread on the soil and compact it. And I've placed these hellebores away from the trees. It's a bit of a myth that hellebores do well in shade. On the whole, they thrive in soil that is rich and holds some moisture and in as much sun as you've got to give them. They can cope with shade, but it's not ideal. Although this is generally woodland planting, this is right at the edge of it. Nice rich soil, lots of compost added. Now, I will water those in, but for the moment, that's the beginning of this border. Now, let's go to another type. This is a very different hellebore. This is Helleborus foetidus, the stinking hellebore. If you crush the leaves, it's a little bit whiffy, but not too bad at all. It will have apple green tubular flowers which are ringed with blood red. It has the great virtue of growing well in dry shade. So what I thought I'd do is have a drift of them along the back here, and the trees and the hedge would absorb too much moisture. Some people find hellebores, the leaves and the flowers, slightly toxic or irritating. So if you're worried about that, wash your hands after you've touched them. Hopefully they will be happy and create a nice big drift. Breeders need a special kind of patience and dedication to select out that special plant. And we went to visit Juliet Davis, who is one of those dedicated hellebore breeders, who is a self-confessed hellebore addict.
I think hellebores really start the whole year off. It's so lovely to have colour in the garden at a time of year when there's only snowdrops around. They just get me. I just love them. And my children. There's always surprises. And you create a bond with them. I've always been a grower of plants. I used to grow a lot of perennial plants. And within the garden, there was a hellebore, a native hellebore, which was just a purpley one. And then I started looking around and realizing that people were beginning to grow other more interesting ones. And I thought, if some of the other breeders can do it, why can't I have a go? It takes 4 years from actually collecting your seed until you have a flowering plant. It's a real labour of love, but to me, it's truly worth it. There's a great fascination with hellebores because you have the single-flowered ones, you have the double ones, and then you have the anemone ones with the raised inner ruff. And they could be spotted, or they could be striped, or they could also be picotees, and the edges of these flowers will be pink. The single ones are easier to breed. The anemones are coming along well, but the doubles are more difficult. The stigma inside the buds can be so tiny that they just can't grasp that pollen at the right stage. I can never produce enough doubles, and just not so easy. This is where I keep my best plants and do all my pollinating. The doors always have to be closed to keep the bees out. I am very selective. As they come into flower, I lift up the heads and see what they're going to do. And I make an assessment and bring them in here and then pollinate. If I wasn't so selective, I would not end up with lovely colours, good strong plants. They would be a mixture of plants. I just find the fascination of the whole process is just incredible. You're working with nature. I am the bee flying around flower to flower and creating new youngsters that are coming on. So this is how I pollinate. I take 2 flowers, and in this instance, they're both picotee. This one's got a lovely creamy face with a darker back and a darker edge. And this one is actually an anemone flower. So I'm hoping that I will end up with a nice picotee at the end. So you're taking a stamen from an open flower. So I use tweezers. And you take a bud which is just opening, and I'm just going to pass the tip with the pollen very gently onto the stigma. There we are. So now I would mark that with a piece of wool. It's easier than you think. And the more you practice, the better you become. What I really would like to achieve is I do love this colour. I mean, to me, it's a bluey grey. Now, I don't have an anemone one, and I don't have a double in this colour yet. And if I manage that, that will be very exciting. Once you're a grower, you're always a grower, and there's always going to be room for one more.
Just as Juliet's hellebores are reaching their full floral beauty, the grasses here at Longmeadow have done their year's work. They look good all winter, but now I need to cut them back and clear the bed so that they can start it all over again, ready for summer. Of course, in order to get that fresh growth coming through, almost all of this top dried material from last year simply needs to be cut back and cleared away. And for the herbaceous grasses, like miscanthus, that's easy. Just cut them back to the ground. Now, when you come to evergreen grasses like this steeper, you can simply tell they're evergreen because there's green at the tops. Don't cut it back, simply run your hand through it and comb it like that. And what you're doing is pulling out the dead material. This is hot work. Jacket's coming off. So the next stage is to take stock with the bare soil, and you can see what's going on, weed what wants to come out, and then I can mulch it. The principle is exactly the same whether you're doing 4 big beds or just 1 square foot. Now, this is crushed bark with a little addition of tennis ball. The tennis ball, of course, is a magic horticultural ingredient, according to Nigel. Crushed bark in this place because I don't want to add too much fertility. High fertility means lush, strong growth, and that is wonderful for fungi, for aphids, but what you want is steady, strong, stocky growth, so the plant isn't overstretched. You can mulch with hay or straw. In the past, I've used garden compost. That's the king of mulches if you've got enough. But whatever you put on, the key is to put it on thick enough. You need at least 2 inches, and 4 inches is perfectly reasonable. And just spread it round the plants you want to keep. These forget-me-nots are fine, but knowing that it is going over the plants that you don't want, and it's got to be thick enough to block light and to keep in moisture if you've only got a certain amount. Better to do half a border really well this year and leave the other half unmulched, and then do the opposite next year. Now, all this is about getting the garden so it looks as good as possible in summer. But Carol is joining a couple who've just bought a house with a garden, and they want to make it the garden of their dreams. But it's really overgrown, and they don't really know where to start. So Carol is at hand, and she'll be guiding and steering them over the course of the next few months.
Sally and Jeff moved into their new home last autumn. It's a beautiful location, but it was the garden that really sold it to them. Now they're in, they don't know where to begin, so they've called on me for a bit of horticultural help.
There's a lot of work, I think, needed, and we're not really sure where to start.
It wasn't until we moved in that we thought, I wonder what we're going to do with this.
This year, I'm going to help them peel back the years and rejuvenate this garden to uncover its glory. It's such a lovely spot, isn't it?
It is. We think it's idyllic.
What do you want from a garden? What are you interested in?
I like flowers and colour.
Well, I quite like structure in a garden.
You want it sorted, don't you? And organised.
Yes, I quite like it ordered, but not neat.
An established garden has its benefits, doesn't it? Because you don't want any clean canvas. You want to appreciate what you've got.
No,
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got some really smashing shrubs here.
For this one, for instance, we've got loads of it all over the place, but I don't know what it is.
It's called, I think now, brachyglottis. It's a daisy. It's a stalwart. Even if you take it right down to the base, it's going to come back. Look a bit bald, first of all, but never mind.
And what's this one with the nice leaves?
This is an evergreen viburnum. I think it's called Davidii. In fact, I'm sure it is. And it has bunches of little white flowers.
So can we prune this back?
I really wouldn't do that. If you actually look deep in here, can you see? It's almost completely bare at the base.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So make the most of that, but perhaps encourage it by taking out that.
Yes, giving it a bit more room.
And giving it more light and air. And you've got a pond!
Oh, I know. I'm so thrilled to finally have a pond. I've always wanted one, so I'm delighted to have it.
And what do you want it to be?
I think it suits the setting, really, to be a wildlife area.
Just because it's wild doesn't mean to say that it doesn't need maintaining. Well, we'll put it off because you've got frog spawn in there, so we don't want to disturb that.
Right.
So we'll let everything do its thing, let the dragonflies hatch, and then perhaps have a go at it later on.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
It looks dead.
Isn't that beautiful? It's a magnificent tree peony.
Ah.
At the end of all these stems are these big fat buds, and they're going to make the most beautiful, enormous yellow flowers. And the thing about it is, here where it is, really it should be resplendent. So you've got to think about perhaps taking out this hypericum.
Yes.
So you can view it everywhere. You've got apple trees.
Yeah, they look a funny size and shape to me. They look very low to the ground.
I think they're lovely. I think they're charming.
Oh, good.
But you need to prune them, and you need to do it very soon. 'Cause
Right.
as soon as they start coming into leaf and flower, then you're too late.
Quite a few trees in the garden, haven't we?
Yeah, you sure have.
One we have a problem with is this one here. Takes a lot of light from the house.
What is it, Carol?
It's a Portugal laurel, and you could possibly thin it out a bit, take out some of the branches,
All
but it's always going to want to be dense and evergreen. But it's more than I can say for this rather sorry specimen.
Yes, it seems to have reached the end of its life.
Well, I think you obviously ought to have that out. But there are a few other conifers that are a bit problematic.
Yes, there's one very close to the house that we feel ought to come out.
It's far too big, really, isn't it, where it is?
Get professional help, get a tree surgeon in.
Should we do it fairly soon?
Definitely.
Yes.
I mean, any work on trees you want to be doing before the birds start nesting. So that's definitely one for the professionals.
Right.
But no excuses here, eh?
No, I think we should just get on with it and get it down.
Right.
OK.
OK. It's lovely to see your garden. You know, it's so evident that it's had such a lot of love in it, hasn't it, over the years? And I know you're going to put lots more into it and just...
We're going to try.
Yes. Onwards. By tackling these dead and overgrown trees, Sally and Jeff will get a clearer picture of what their garden could become.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see the transformation in Sally and Jeff's garden. And we'll do that because we'll be joining Carol as she pays repeated visits, steering them towards a beautiful garden. Now is the time to sow sweet peas. And it doesn't matter what you choose, the technique is the same. And I've got some seed compost, It is probably a little bit richer than you would normally use for seed. I've added a bit of my own leaf mould and sieved garden compost, but any peat-free potting compost with a little bit more drainage will do well. A few years ago, we did a trial here at Longmeadow, and we found that by sowing them now, in March, you really got maximum flower from your sweet peas. You can direct sow them in May, but they take much longer to flower. I've got a variety here called Gilly, which I've never grown before, but I've chosen it because I want to make a scented garden, a garden which really all the focus is on fragrance and aroma. And this, by repute, is delicious. And I put 3 to a pot, and if only one germinates, I keep it there and don't add to it. If all 3, then I plant them all out as a group, so I don't thin them out. And this technique works really well for me. Give them a little bit of protection. Doesn't need to be a greenhouse. It could be a porch or a windowsill. Water them and let them alone. Right, in the fullness of time, they'll be ready to plant out into my new scented garden and fill the air with delicious fragrance. Now, I do realise that most people live in towns, and most town gardens are limited in size. And Joe is continuing his series looking at ways of making the most of any town garden, and above all, on how to make it feel as spacious as possible.
In a small town garden, it may seem impossible to fit everything in and not be dominated by your urban surroundings. But as this garden by Chris Moss demonstrates, with some careful design choices, you can create a personal oasis that defies its dimensions.
This small garden has instant impact from the second you leave the back door. It's just 5 metres wide by 22 metres long. But this plant-filled haven is the perfect antidote to its urban surrounds.
This is a west-facing garden, and the layout has started with ways to get the best from the sun.
There are 3 main areas for seating. Down the bottom there, perfect because it relates to the kitchen. And then where I am now catches the afternoon sun. And then at the end, there's another seating area around here, and that catches the morning sun beautifully. So we've got 3 areas to sit. But what I really love about this garden and what makes it for me is this simple path. It just arcs all the way through the garden, and what that does is create a nice generous bed on the right-hand side, the sunny side, but also plenty of plants on the other side too. The only other elements are some screens, and the 2 key ones are one towards the back, which screens off the storage area and a compost heap, and there's one halfway down this bed here, but they're not very tall. They reveal themselves in the winter when the planting dies down. The rest of it is all about the plants that come around these seating areas, and there's plenty of height in the planting, so you feel completely enveloped in them.
A very small garden gives you the opportunity to create your own personalised space, and that starts with the boundaries. In this garden, right outside the door, the walls have been painted black. It's a good low-budget option for a small space.
Now, black may seem like a really brave colour to use in the garden, but here I think it's so effective. It actually recedes into the background and makes the space feel bigger. But also, it intensifies the greens of the plant in front of it, like the tree fern and the box. They look absolutely perfect. There's not too many colours fighting together. It's just the green and the black, and that's it.
But further into the planting, there's a more naturalistic approach.
It's really nice to see a hedge in a city, this wonderful beech hedge, which filters the wind, filters the light, it reflects the seasons because it'll turn a wonderful autumn colour. And from a design point of view, what it does is sort of blur the boundary of the garden, can't quite work out exactly where it ends, so actually makes it feel bigger.
When it comes to planting, repetition and simplicity help stretch a small space. But restricting your choices doesn't mean everything will look the same.
There's a huge variety of plants in this garden, but the one structural evergreen plant that's tying it all together is box. Now, we often see it in a formal garden, but here, because we've got different sized box balls in different sized pots, it starts that informal theme. The box is cleverly woven throughout the garden, straddling either side of the path. Here we've got a large mounded form nestled in amongst the softer planting. And then on the other side, because box can thrive in sun or shade, we've got this lovely cloud-pruned hedge. Now, it's a bold statement, but this garden doesn't have any lawn at all, so this box is providing plenty of green all year round. In a tiny garden like this, the finishing touches are so important. It's all about keeping it simple. It's easy to want to get carried away with the decorative elements in a garden, and it can overall look a little bit fussy and a bit confused. What I really like about this garden is that there are these pots in front of the screens, 3 of them dotted throughout, which accentuate the width of the garden but also the length. It's understated and it's really classy, and it harmonises the garden as a whole. And those screens also work well as a foil for lighting at night to create focal points that mark out the garden. While closer to the house, the lighting here really helps set the mood. This garden has everything you'd want from a small space. It's got plenty of variety, some wonderful planting, privacy from the neighbours, and plenty of places to sit. But what I really like about it is that it hasn't been divided up into rooms and it hasn't been compartmentalised. So there's a lovely seamless flow throughout to create a unique city garden.
At this time of year, the garden reveals its treasures by degrees. You get these little moments of glory, whether it be a crocus coming through or some new foliage. But nothing so far this year has given me more pleasure than the catkins of the purple hazel. These pink lamb's tails are absolutely lovely. Now, of course, as well as enjoying the highlights at this time of year, there are jobs that have to be done. And here are some jobs that you can be getting on with at home this weekend. One of the first seeds that you can sow in your vegetable garden or allotment are broad beans. Dig the ground over and add some compost or manure, then rake it level. I like to sow them in double rows, the width of a plank. Space the beans about 3 or 4 inches apart, rake them over lightly and leave them to grow. It's time to prune the late-flowering clematis, like Clematis verticella, that produce a mass of small blooms after the middle of June and carry on right through into autumn. These new flowers are produced on the current season's growth, so everything that grew last year can be cut away. I like to leave a couple of buds, so there's about a foot of growth, but otherwise be brave and cut hard. Rhubarb is growing strongly now, but there's still a high percentage of leaf to stem. But if you force it, all the energy goes into the stems, and they're extra sweet. So as the buds emerge, cover them up, and a bucket will do the job fine. Make sure there's no light, and in a few weeks' time, you should be able to harvest deliciously sweet, succulent stems. Now look what I found. This is a hedgehog. It was hibernating in amongst the grasses. Still very sleepy, but hedgehogs are becoming terribly rare. And if you find one in the garden, you must look after it. Now, what I'm going to do is put him somewhere where he can continue to hibernate and wake up naturally. I've got a pile of sticks and twigs round the corner, and if I bury him in that, he'll be safe from people like Nigel and worse, and then when he's ready to wake up, he'll be able to come out at his own time and pace. Now, I left this pile for wildlife, for things like hedgehogs to use. But let's just lift that up. In you go, fella. In you go. Cover him up. Well, let's hope he's okay. Well, that's exciting and a privilege. And that's it for this time. Bye-bye.